Being a successful entrepreneur or leader doesn't mean you have to run on fumes. Dr. Andy Melton's Strategic Rhythm Reset helps high performers redesign their week so they can achieve more with less stress. During a 90-minute session, you'll dive deep into protecting your priorities and focus on your energy. You'll receive a personalized blueprint that balances business goals, relationships, health, and personal priorities. Afterward, a rhythm reset guide will summarize your insights and provide tools to keep you aligned, and a follow-up call ensures you stay on track. The benefits? Clarity on what truly matters. Freedom from overwhelm, better performance with less stress, a repeatable system, and momentum for long-term growth. Ready to reclaim your time and energy? Visit scalinguph2o.com/Andy Melton. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/ANDYMELTON. Don't wait, book your Strategic Rhythm Reset with Dr. Andy Melton today. Hey there, Scaling Up Nation. It's Trace Blackmore here with a shout out to all the hardworking water treaters out there. You deserve a partner who's just as dedicated as you are. That's why I want to introduce you to my friends Sarah, Drew, Dave, and the rest of the crew at North Metal and Chemical Company. North Metal isn't just about delivering high-quality chemicals. They're about delivering exceptional support from experienced professionals who understand our industry inside and out. Their unmatched service means they're ready to ship your Northwest brand chemicals when you need them, no matter the challenge. With their commitment to small businesses and long-term partnerships, North Metal and Chemical Company is here to help you succeed every step of the way. Visit scalinguph2o.com/North today and learn how they can support your water treatment goals. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/North. North Metal and Chemical Company, serving the water treatment industry since 1921. Welcome to the Scaling Up H2O podcast, the podcast where we scale up on knowledge so we don't scale up our systems. I'm Trace Blackmore, the host of the Scaling Up H2O podcast. And Nation, I gotta tell you, I love hosting this podcast. I love everything about it. I love researching. I love meeting all the new people out there in the industrial water treatment community, whether they are a guest on this show or whether they are a listener of this show. And of course, all of those people, all of you, all of us are the Scaling Up Nation. I love that we have a Scaling Up Nation. I love that when we go to conferences, people will wear their Scaling Up button, and that's helping them network and meet new people because, as you know, that's that magic button that we talk about. All that to say, I truly love doing this podcast. Now, why am I saying all this? Because how do you know your next love? And I'm talking about doing something, not a particular person. So stay in the relationships you're in, people. I'm talking about the next activity. How do you know what your next love is going to be out there? And I am thinking back when I started this podcast, I knew nothing about podcasts. I didn't even know what a podcast was and that there were podcasts. And I shared with you that my friend Charlie Cicchetti, who has been on this podcast several times, he said I should do a podcast. And I took that as a compliment because why not? But then I followed that with the question, what is a podcast? He laughed at me and he got me set up with my first podcast player. And I just couldn't believe all that content that was out there. And that became a love, just listening to these experts that had all of this knowledge, that they did everything they needed to do to get that knowledge, and they were freely sharing that with me over the podcast. I just thought that that was incredible. Now, I would not have known about any of that if I did not put myself into a situation where I was continuously learning. So that's my question for you right now. Are you in a situation, or do you have something that's baked into your regular life that allows you to learn new things, to explore things you might not have even heard of yet, like me with the podcast back in, that was probably 2013 or 14? Do you have something like that? Now, for me, that was that mastermind group that I was a member of, that Charlie was a member of. And I joined that not knowing that that was the purpose, but that's really what that became. The gentleman that led that, his name was Tim Fulton. His name still is Tim Fulton. He's been on this podcast multiple times. I meet with Tim on a regular basis throughout the year. And he's always challenging me to think differently, to look at things differently, to do differently. And I put myself in front of him for that reason. Now, he brought that to the mastermind. We're doing it on an individual basis, as I just described, but he also brought that to that mastermind group. And every month when we would get together, I would come back with all of these different books that I had never heard of, all of these different podcasts that I needed to listen to. Maybe there was a journal that I had not thought about reading, or a particular article, because I showed up and I was ready to give. I didn't just show up. I had information that I was sharing with other people. Because I did that, I now had a venue that allowed me to learn new things. And I just told you all the things that I love about this podcast. I didn't even know what a podcast was. I would not have met possibly you if it hadn't been through this podcast. So, are you in some sort of situation where it's just baked in that you're going to learn new things? People are going to challenge you with how you're thinking or how you're doing for the only reason that it's your benefit. Now, I have our own mastermind, and that's not the purpose that I'm talking about this. But if you do want to learn more about the Rising Tide Mastermind, by all means, go to risingtidemastermind.team, and we have all the information there. That's a great venue that does exactly what it is that we're talking about. But there are also so many other venues out there. I would love it if you started thinking about that. And maybe it's something you could put together with your team. And every couple of weeks, you have a team meeting and everybody has to bring a new idea. Or everybody has to have an observation about another team member. Now, in a loving way, of course. You can do so much with that. But a lot of people just simply aren't thinking that way. Last week, I was talking about a lot of people will say they're bored in this industry. And that just hurts my heart when I hear that, because my dad, he prepped me on my very first day. And last week, I talked about the first day. The first day, he said, if you ever get bored in this industry, you're doing it incorrectly. And folks, that is a sign that you're doing it incorrectly. And if you don't have people that are challenging you, or at the very least bringing you new information, you're probably going to get bored. So I hope that this has motivated you, that you're going to look for something you can join, something you can do that will allow you a venue to learn the next thing that you love. Well, Nation, we all love our friend James McDonald, and here is a brand new Word with Water by James.
Hello and welcome to Words of Water with James, the industrial water game show where I give you the definition and you get to guess the word or phrase being defined. Will you rise to the top or get blown down to try your luck another day? There's only one way to find out on Words of Water with James. Today's definition is a single reactive molecule, usually an organic compound, having the ability to join with a number of similarly defined molecules to form a polymer. Can you guess the word or phrase? The answer is monomer. Okay, for those who got it correct, step to the right. For those who got it wrong, please step to the left. Some folks even brought their inner tubes. I'm James McDonald, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Words of Water with James.
Well, thank you, James. And if you need to catch up on any of those, we make that super easy for you. Go to scalinguph2o.com, go over to the previous shows, and we've got all of those listed so you can catch up and stay up with our friend James McDonald. Now, James McDonald was somebody that I met through the Association of Water Technologies. And the Association of Water Technologies is the group that I kind of grew up in. It was a group that did a lot of things like I was mentioning in the introduction of this episode. And when I was on the board of directors, that's just how the board of directors was that I was on. We weren't only challenging the industry and the organization, we were challenging each other. So you can really find that and what I'm asking you to do in any format. The point is you need to look for it and you need to make sure that you find it. And it's my hope that you have friends like James McDonald that I have from the AWT or from whatever organization that you are a member of. And I want to make sure that you have networking opportunities for you to meet people like I met, or maybe James met me. I'm not sure who met each other first, but I'm glad we met because we are now friends. And of course, the collaboration that we do together is just fantastic. And by the way, spoiler alert, it was so popular last Industrial Water Week for 2025, where we did a brand new installment of Detective H2O each and every day. We're going to do it again. That's right. James has committed that we're going to have 5 brand new Detective H2Os for this year's Industrial Water Week. Trace, when is Industrial Water Week? I am so glad that you asked. Well, that's going to be the first full week of every October, every year. So that's going to be October 5th through 9th this year. So go ahead and mark your calendars so you can get ready for an amazing celebration. Last year, we had more people than ever celebrating. I have no doubt it's going to be even bigger this year. And why shouldn't it? It's celebrating the best industry to have a career in. And of course, that's what the Scaling Up Nation is all about. So super excited about that. And I'm super excited to tell you about this. I've mentioned this a couple times, but I want to make sure that if you are going, you get a seat because there are only so many seats and they do sell out. So the 2026 AWT Technical Training Seminar on this quarter is taking place March 10th through 13th. And why I say this quarter is normally they do one back-to-back, but in different parts of the country. Well, they're changing it up a little this year. It's going to be in one part of the country, and that's going to be in the Dallas, Texas area, specifically the Frisco area. And that's taking place once again, March 10th through 13th. And I can't tell you when the next one is taking place because they haven't told me yet. As soon as they tell me, I will then tell that to you so you can start planning that. But it is going to be, I hear, in Q3 or Q4, and it's going to be in the exact same spot right off of Dallas, which is Frisco, Texas, and that is the AWT Technical Training Seminar. Now, I used to talk about all the different courses and things that were going on, and it used to be relatively simple to do on the podcast. But now there are so many simultaneous courses going on there. I'm just going to say, if you are involved in our industry, you want to go here. And if you've been before, there's something new. There's like 5 different courses that are going on simultaneously. There is so much going on. So go to scalinguph2o.com, go over to our events section. We're going to have information there. We'll be able to send you over to all the events that we're talking about. But you're going to want to look at this. And if you're not signed up, you're going to want to sign up for this because, like I said, they only have so many spots. And if you want to get into a particular course and you've waited too long and you don't have that spot, you're going to be upset. And I don't want you to be upset. So go ahead and take care of that right now. And trust me, come with the attitude that you are going to learn. And if you were thinking, how do I convince somebody to let me go to one of these? All you have to do is tell them that you are going to bring back something, or maybe there's a particular topic that you see that's in the agenda, and you say, I'm going to bring what I learned about this topic to our company, and I'm going to train the company on one of these topics. Trust me, that person will have no problem letting you go to that conference because they know it's not just you going, you're going to come and you're going to enhance the entire team. Something else you might want to check into is the AMP annual conference. And of course, AMP is the Association for Materials Protection and Performance. They're having their annual conference March 15th through 19th. That's going to be in Houston, Texas. And Nation, we're going to have all the information for that conference on our events page. Another one that we'll mention is the Indoor Air Quality, Ventilation, and Energy Conservation Conference. It is their 12th conference. It gets better each and every year. And another conference you might want to investigate is the Indoor Air Quality, Ventilation, and Energy Conservation Conference. That's taking place May 18th through 22nd, and that's going to be held in Los Angeles, California. We're going to have all the information on this show and so many more. All you have to do is go to scalinguph2o.com and, of course, go over to our events section. And folks, we have so many things up there. And if you see something, I guess you wouldn't see it. So if you don't see something you're expecting to see, let us know what that is. You can go over to our show ideas page and say, hey, look at this conference. We really understand how difficult it is to drive from account to account and keep up with all the things that are going on in our industry. So that's one of the ways we want to try to make things a little bit easier for you to find these conferences. So if you see something, or like I said, don't see something that is not up there, and it should be, let us know what that is. And while you're there, I mean, you're already on the show ideas page. Why not let us know of a particular guest or topic or show idea, or maybe a question that you have for Pinks and Blues, so we can get that on an upcoming show. Folks, that's how we ensure that we're always going to have new shows for you. And I want to make sure that we're always staying relevant. So help us help you in all things that I just mentioned. We are the Scaling Up Nation. And here is our next interview. My lab partner today is Paul O'Callahan, founder and CEO of BlueTech Research, author of The Dynamics of Water Innovation, and the executive producer of Brave Blue World and Our Blue World. Paul, welcome to the Scaling Up H2O podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Trace. I'm delighted to be here.
We are very excited to have you here. And wow, what a title. You're doing so many things. How do you keep them all straight?
They're all variations on a theme. It's like I play one tune on different instruments, but they're all variations. It's all about water innovation. Yeah.
Well, as your introduction alludes to, we've got a lot of ground to cover. You do so much in the water space, and I want to try to touch on a little bit of everything today. But before we do that, do you mind letting the Scaling Up Nation know a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so as your scaling up listeners probably guessed, I'm from Ireland already. Though I spent a lot of my life living elsewhere. I'm a bit of a wanderer, as many of the Irish are actually. So I lived for about 7 or 8 years in Vancouver in Canada and consider that home as well, became a Canadian along the way. But I'm speaking to you today from my home in Cork, Ireland, where it's a lovely autumnal day. The blackberries are ripening. We got the harvest moons, as many of us do right now. I'm a water scientist by background and training, but I guess I grew up near water, Trace. I grew up next to water. It always felt part of my life, I think, from a very early age. Spent my youth paddling around it on rafts and the like, and always kind of was concerned about water quality as a teenager. Went on to study environmental science, biochemistry, worked in Malaysia with the World Wildlife Fund back in the late 1990s, and there was an awful lot more of the rainforest left in Borneo when I was there. Sadly, not as much now. But we were looking at the interactions of upland rainforest on water purification and downstream, which of course has become something very much front of mind now as we understand how important forestry is to the water cycle, particularly in an era of extreme weather events. Had the opportunity to work in industry, in cosmetics manufacturing, which gave me a lifelong interest in everything to do with shampoos and face cleansers and you name it. I was with the Body Shop, but of course, when you make this stuff, you make wastewater, and that wastewater happened to be quite bubbly because it had sodium lauryl sulfate in it. So we had all sorts of practical issues to contend with and treat it. And from there, I fell in love with the whole alchemy, the dynamics of changing water from one phase to another phase, and the fact that it came in looking frothy and bubbly and slightly stinky. And by the time it went out the other end, there were little critters swimming around in it. And I thought that was absolutely amazing. And that kind of led me on a journey of piloting and testing and running up and down ladders and cranking open valves, which I wasn't the best operator in the world, but I learned most of what I know that's practical. I did learn from operators.
Was there a pivotal moment that you said, I want to do water as my career?
I was in Malaysia and I was volunteering in a highland rainforest project, and it sounded more exciting in some ways than it was. I was hammering nails into trees because we were doing a survey of rainforest plants, and we had to identify all the trees in the transect to look at biodiversity. But I realized I wasn't skilled enough to be truly valuable to the organization. I needed to go back and add to my undergrad with some more vocational qualification, and I looked at all the options open to me at the time, and I got very excited about water because I thought in the long run, I was 27 at the time. And I thought looking forward, that's likely to be something that's only going to become more and more important. So I was strategic about that. I also loved to travel, still do. And I thought, well, water sounds like I could travel with that. I mean, everyone needs water everywhere in the world. And then I found a really, really good course in Edinburgh. And it did turn out to be a wonderful course because I was studying freshwater ecology, marine ecology, environmental economics, hydraulics. So I came out of that course a much more useful, skilled professional. And then I went back to Malaysia and I worked on an integrated catchment water management project. But that was the moment when my career took that pivot in the journey. And I suppose the second pivot into tech was during the course, a lecturer came in one day, visiting lecturer, and he talked about living machines. And these living machines sounded awesome. I mean, they were plants growing and it looked like Jurassic Park or something with reeds and typhus and phragmites, and he was treating the water. So I was so enthused. I went up to the lecturer at the end of the class and I said, do you have any research projects? I have to do a research project with my master's degree. And he said, yeah, I think I could maybe find you one. And he found me the one in the Body Shop, the cosmetics manufacturer. And that's where I got into tech. That's how that started.
I'm curious, what was the class called that you took in Edinburgh?
It was called water resource management. It was quite broad and vocational because you could arrive at this having, as I had done, a degree in biochemistry, or you could arrive with an undergrad in ecology. But coming out the end of it, you were a much more rounded person. But water resource management was the theme.
I've heard more and more schools are doing courses that are centered around water. I always love to ask questions when I hear of another one.
Yeah, I'd love to go back actually to that course and see how they're doing and how it's evolved over the years actually. But those types of courses are fantastic because water is multidisciplinary. And oftentimes, if you're a civil engineer, you're a civil engineer. Whereas here, we got lectures from civil engineers, but also economists and also ecologists. And that kind of equips you well, doesn't it, for going out into that world where you're likely going to need to work interdisciplinary, particularly in water.
Can you tell us more about what BlueTech research does?
Yeah, well, you could sum it up. We do our best to help people put capital to work more efficiently to solve water challenges or to create value in solving water challenges. We do that by reducing uncertainty, answering questions, hoping people can make a better, more informed decision. And that really was born out of in the body shop and when I work with consulting engineering firms, I came across these incredibly enthusiastic entrepreneurs in water. You know the types, right? The type of people that they've got a spark in their eye, spring in their step. They believe that they have something wonderful to bring to the world. And their passion, it exudes from them about this. But having worked with them for maybe 2 or 3 years in this area, I saw, God, they're making a lot of the same mistakes. The pilot didn't work, or maybe they didn't get the contract after the pilot, or that wasn't exactly the best fit for that technology. And I thought it's a shame to see a year wasted, or maybe in their case, they might have raised venture capital and they didn't get to the hurdle they needed to get to. And I thought, well, if you could short circuit that by helping people identify product market fit, understanding the keys to piloting. So that was the genesis, really. And I began by working with startup companies like Ostara. Nutrient Recovery Technologies was probably the first one that I worked in a really hands-on manner with. But then that broadened out ultimately to trying to help large water tech companies who wanted to know, God, what's new? What should we be keeping our eye on? And then the venture capital community at that time were just getting into clean tech. Clean tech, solar, wind, biofuels was all burgeoning, and water was kind of under that umbrella. And I found a lot of venture capital investors were trying to understand it. So what BlueTech does is we try and make sense of a complex world, see what's the signal, eliminate the noise, and I was also reading a lot of market research reports that I didn't find that useful. I'd have to wade through 300 pages to get to one table with one figure, which, I wasn't even sure if I could trust it at the end of it. And I thought, yeah, I think there's a better way than that. So we tried to come into this as people who knew water, as water experts. And I love working with people who are real domain experts in their field. It's one of the most fulfilling aspects of my job to work with Graham Pearce on membranes, Karen Meidlinger on hydrogen, Ali Ling on PFAS, combining that with the young, bright, enthusiastic research analysts that we have within the team at BlueTech Research as well.
So, if there's somebody out there today that's listening that has an idea that's going to solve one of our many water problems, how do they connect with you? And kind of a secondary question, how do you find people that don't know to connect with you?
Yeah, well, the startup world, you meet kind of organically, bit by bit, day by day. They don't all exist in one place. So you might meet some through they might be interviewed on scaling H2O, or we might meet them at WebTech. We're out and about quite a bit at WebTech and other events such as that. We're excited about innovation. So once we get wind of something, we usually sniff it out and we chase it like hound dogs or something. Or we say, oh, what's that? Oh, that's curious. Let's find out what that's about. And then we contact them and learn about what they're doing. And then if we can be of help to them, particularly of late, actually, in telling their story, because it's one of the things I do believe is important is the ability to get people excited and tell your story. So we work with startup companies to help them track their journey, chart it, analyze it, do it robustly, do it transparently, but then somehow capture the drama that's always involved in these stories and then help them with that. And then for the larger companies, we work with the chief technology officers, the CTOs, the mergers and acquisition team, strategic investors, and each of those has a different question. I mean, the CTO is always curious, what do I need to do to future-proof my technology portfolio? If I'm within Trojan, when's the right time for me to get UV LED? How long can I wait? Should I wait? Maybe you don't want to be providing, energy-consuming wastewater treatment plant when the world is moving towards energy neutral or energy positive. So we help the CTOs trying to look around corners, see what they might need to future-proof, and then how do they do that? Sometimes that's an acquisition, sometimes that's internal research and development from their own teams. And then the investors, of course, are another part of that group as well.
I did want to ask you about investors because I'm sure you know both sides. You're creating the bridge between the inventor and the investor. I'm sure you can see that, well, this group will work really well with this party, but not so much with that one. So, how do you help make sure that you get the success that everybody's looking for?
So much of it is down to, again, as you said, matching the right investor with the right technology, with the right entrepreneur, with the right market. And there are certain things that really fit together well, like a lock and a key. And then once you get that right fit, it's like anything. It's like you turn on the engine and hums, and then you're going to go at 80 miles an hour down the highway. But sometimes in the enthusiasm, the investor wants to believe the pitch. The entrepreneur wants to put their best foot forward. And in doing so, there can be a misalignment or a mismatch because they're fundamentally speaking different languages. And that's the other thing I found was that people were speaking different languages. The word innovation itself meant different things. A water utility would say we need innovation. What they mean is I'd love to reduce my operational costs. I would love if that asset lasted 5 years longer. I would love if I could expand my capacity without having to dig a new greenfield site. An entrepreneur spoke about innovation. It was, I have this thing that I think is fantastic and I'd love to sell you it and lots of it. And then the investor was coming in with a different lens as well. I would like you to be 10 times larger, maybe 100 times larger than you are now and profitable within 5 years. And many people were using the word disruptive innovation, but it had lost its meaning. So trying to get the languages aligned. So the matches that would be good would be if you're an investor and you want to go for the next big breakthrough, 10 exit, 100 exit, don't invest in sustaining innovation. Look for something that's ideally driven by a crisis because then it will grow quite quickly. Invest in what we would call a radical functionality or discontinuous innovation, which basically means market taking or market creating. But equally, another investor might say, actually, I'm very happy if I get a 3x, a 4x, a 5x return. I understand water isn't tech, and I'm willing to wait 6 or 7 years. Then you can pair them with a different technology, and same with utilities. So I think the understanding of it's like phenotypes, or it's like phenotypes and genotypes or personality types. This is not one homogeneous world where there are just innovative water technologies and investors. This is much more nuanced than that. And I think what BlueTech does and what I've been trying to do is to map out how tease it apart a little bit and understand, okay, if you're interested in this type of tech, you might find ceramic membranes are the best thing since sliced bread for you. If you're interested in improving what's out there quickly with low risk, maybe a company like VARTech, which you can clamp it onto the top of an activated sludge tank, replaces a fine bubble diffuser. It's an existing market. Maybe that's the right type of fit for you. But understanding that VARTech with surface aerators is extremely different to ceramic membranes is a key part of it.
So now we bring regulations into the mix. How does that play a role?
Regulations are, in a regulated market, regulations are critical. So much of what we do with water and wastewater is driven by regulations, but it's quite risky to build your entire business on regulations and hoping that regulations will magically make a market appear like a magician's wand conjuring a rabbit out of a hat. And there it will be the PFAS removal market or the selenium market or the whatever. We've seen this so many times. There was the selenium regulations with emission limit guidelines from the US EPA. They didn't quite take effect the way people thought they would, and the market didn't materialize. The ballast water market was very, very similar. So regulations are fantastic if you know they're coming and they're predictable and they're on their way, you can really plan quite well for it. But oftentimes it could take 10, 12 years before a new piece of legislation is adopted in the Senate. The PFAS regulations are a great example. The UCPA first began drafting regulations for this about 2015, right? And we're 10 years on now. So you just got to be really, really careful on the timing is the key with regulations and understanding when are they going to have an effect and how quickly will they be enforced. So we track them quite closely. One thing I have noticed about regulations of late is they're becoming much more aspirational. So we went from regulations in the 1970s with the US EPA Clean Watersheds Needs Act, where rivers were on fire and we had to do something about that. Rivers were dead, they were dying. We've addressed that problem, but the regulations that we're seeing now are aspirational. They're about systems level change. There's a bill in the Senate right now about water reuse in the industrial space. In Europe, there's regulation in France driving water reuse. In India, regulations driving groundwater replenishment. More regs focused on energy neutrality. So I see them as being not as much about reducing harm as much as about quite focused on regeneration, making things better, closing the loop on energy, water, nutrients. So that's kind of a shift we're seeing.
Paul, in a market that's always evolving like water, how do you keep up with your company?
Well, one of our themes for this year is the wheel is always turning. Like nothing stands still. And this year that's been very much to the forefront in every aspect of political, economical life you can see. And it's the same in BlueTech research. We have to continue to evolve as the market's evolving, track what's new, what's coming down the line. Right now, we're focused on energy storage, lithium, hydrogen as part of a green economy, industrial water reuse, closing the loop. Equally, new technologies like bipolar membranes, non-thermal plasma, hydrothermal carbonization, to track these things. We're also leveraging new technology. So with the advent of artificial intelligence and large language models, we've been able to build new tools that allow us to read and track legislation in multiple languages. And that's a product we're launching in January, which we're excited about because it brings in LLMs and AI, but tracks what's new and changing globally in terms of regulation. And then we interpret that for clients to try and see, okay, what does that mean in terms of a membrane technology or a wastewater treatment plant? So yeah, those are some of the newer things we're excited about. They're evolving and changing.
Paul, can you tell us about your book, The Dynamics of Water Innovation?
Sure. So this evolved from doing a PhD. I was late doing a PhD, Trace. I'd left university a long, long time ago. One of my team members wanted to go back and do a PhD, and I thought, oh, I wish he could stay at BlueTech. So I asked a professor on UK Spiceman. I said, is there any way he could stay with BlueTech and do his PhD? And he said, oh, yes, you can. You can do it as an external PhD candidate and do 4 research papers. And by the time he'd finished talking to me, I went, I wonder, could I do a PhD? That sounds sounds good to me. So I ended up doing the PhD. Now, so did Connor, and he's gone on to get his doctorate also. But mine was based on the questions I had in water. I said, why don't I apply an academic lens to them? I was worried or concerned about the echo chamber effect. If you say something over and over often enough, it becomes true because perception is reality. And I had my lived experience within water was at odds with the echo chamber. The echo chamber was water is conservative, it's extremely slow, it's risk averse. And I thought, we're going to self-hypnotize ourselves into that. And then, no one's going to try anything. But my own lived experience told me, I've seen things moving. I've seen a membrane bioreactor go from absolutely zero. I piloted some of the first MBRs, xenon and Kubota, and within 10 years, that was kind of a mainstream technology. It was bought by GE. I went, okay, how long does it take? So that was the first thing. I said, well, let's put some numbers on this because I'd also been around long enough to see some companies being at pilot testing 8, 9, 10 years later. And I went, that seems really slow. Even in a world where things take time, that seems a little bit odd to me. So looked at timelines, then looked at what type of things succeeded, what things don't succeed, what drives it, what types of innovation, published that, and then thought, why don't we put it into a book? And if the book could be useful to entrepreneurs, to innovation teams, maybe anybody now from somebody studying an MBA, to a PhD, to a young professional, to somebody in the field. So the book is really about what have we learned, how does this work, and where can we do better?
We'll make sure to put a link so if somebody wants to get that book, they can very easily go to whatever link you send us. We'll put it on our show notes page.
Yeah, thanks. I'd love to get any feedback. So always very, very welcome.
Time for a quick break, Scaling Up Nation, as we hear from one of our sponsors. Hey there, Scaling Up Nation. Trace Blackmore here, and I've got a special water treatment solution that can streamline your water treatment operations. I'm talking about Commonwealth Chemical Specialties. These folks aren't just another distributor, they're your partners in industrial water treatment success. Since 2014, they've been providing top-notch products across North America. We're talking biocides, scale inhibitors, corrosion inhibitors, biofilm control, membrane anti-scalants and cleaners, virtually everything for your water treatment needs. You name it, they've got it. And get this, they've got nationwide warehousing for quick delivery. No more waiting around when you need those critical products. But here's what really sets them apart. Their technical team, led by Lisa Corbett DiMartino, a chemist with over 35 years of experience, will work with you to find the best solution for your needs. They even offer technical training seminars to keep you and your team at the top of your game. When you're looking to source your industrial water treatment products or need expert advice, discover why Commonwealth Chemical Specialties is more than just a distributor. Head over to scalinguph2o.com/Commonwealth to find out more. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/Commonwealth. Commonwealth Chemical Specialties, more than a distributor, discover the difference. A big thank you to our sponsors. They help keep us running. And now, back to the interview. You mentioned storytelling early on when we started talking, and you did a fantastic job in your 2 award-winning documentaries with storytelling. Do you mind telling the Scaling Up Nation how that came to be and then what you've learned from that experience?
So how it came to be, again, is lived experience, where I find myself lucky and fortunate to work coming across new exciting innovations and talented people who are focused on bringing those innovations through. And yet a lot of the narrative out there was quite doom and gloom about, oh, we've got water wars will be fought over water. And I thought, that's only one side of this. I see a different side of it, a more hopeful, optimistic side. And then another origin part of that was I got a call one day, and sometimes when you get a call out of the blue that changes things, you can always picture exactly where you were when you took the call. So I was traveling somewhere in a hotel room, and my mobile rang, and the person said, "I'm from the Discovery Series channel." And I went, "Oh, I don't get too many calls coming in from the Discovery Series channel, or the Discovery Channel." And they said, "We want to make a documentary, and one episode's about water and about supercritical water oxidation and sludge destruction. Would you be willing to take part?" And I said, "Absolutely, count me in." And they came to Cork and they filmed the supercritical water oxidation technology. And it's kind of surreal, Trace, because I found myself standing on top of a secondary clarifier, which is an environment I'm used to. And we had a New York director who was getting angles and shots on the water coming over the weir, and he was so excited about this. And we had the host, Joanna, and she actually didn't like the smell, I have to admit. This was not comfortable for Joanna. The other episodes were about nicer things like biotechnology for eye surgery and this type of thing. So we were in the sludge drying room, and I think Joanna just about lasted 60 seconds in there. Anyway, I loved it. And when I saw what they did with it later on, I went, wow, you could really make this entertaining. It was called Dean of Invention by Dean Kamen. He's an inventor, and it was part of his series. So that in the back of my head was always there. You can make water exciting. And then I thought about all the cool things that were out there, and I thought, God, if you told that story, wouldn't that be quite interesting and engaging? And I kind of was hopping around the back of my head for a few years until a workshop with the Water Environment Federation, facilitated by a wonderful lady called Denise Balcwell. And that kind of helped me to crystallize it. Came up with a pitch. People got on board. Before I knew it, people somehow funded me to make a film, and I knew nothing about how to make a film. But I had to learn quick. And we got a few lucky breaks along the way. Not least of all was being called to meet Matt Damon in Davos. And that all became kind of a surreal snowball effect, where we found ourselves then in the Paramount Theatre in Hollywood in December 2019, and it launched on Netflix. So you get a few lucky breaks along the way, but I do think that the truth is that it was the type of project that was needed. It hadn't been done, and I was happy to be able to kind of be like the lightning rod in a way that was the conduit for it.
No, I didn't mention the name before, but you, of course, were referring to Brave Blue World. I'm curious, you took that, you had that idea, you had the experience, you got the idea, you then pitched that, but that documentary was full of celebrities. How did they even know you were doing the film?
So the universe seemed to want this thing to happen, because every door we knocked on, the door kind of was easier to open than it might otherwise have been. So one of my team, Sarah, contacted some of Matt Damon's team, and they get approached all the time because everybody wants Matt Damon to be in their film. But most of the time they say no, but they liked the fact that this was connected with positivity, hope, optimism. We can do this. So we started just with the outreach, the ask. I think it probably helped that, a mentor of mine, Glenn Dygher, had worked with Gary White in CH2. So I think Glenn put in a good word for me, and that probably helped as well. But you ask, to be honest, Trace, we asked Liam Neeson, and he liked the idea. He said, this sounds like a really worthwhile project. And he said to his agent, we should do this. We should do this. Jaden Smith was the same. So I think the fact that they saw the merit in it, they wanted to get behind it.
And then you had so much fun, you decided to do another one.
Well, you see, this is where someone probably needs to talk with me and tell me not to do these things. And when you finish a project like that, everyone says, what are you going to do next? What's next? And, your first reaction is, I'm going to do nothing. Actually, I've just finished something. But when you've had a chance to gather your breath a little bit, then you think, gee, what would be worthwhile? And we thought, well, you could make another documentary about water. You could tell people more solutions, but what would change it? We thought, well, if people fell in love with water, if they valued water, that would be fundamentally a shift. And the challenge is, how do you make water personal? Because we all take it for granted. It's all around us. We hardly see it when it comes out of the taps because it's just there. But then we thought, well, it is personal because, where you come from in Atlanta there, where you're calling from, no doubt there's a body of water. And that kind of defines your sense of place and identity. And for the people there, it's important. And that's true of every person everywhere. Rivers have been defining us since as long as we've been around. So we thought if we made a film that was about culture, spirituality, the personal relationship with water, that might be an interesting new thing to do. So I went to a director with the idea and he said, you're crazy. That's never going to work. He was intrigued, but also he kind of declined it once or twice before I eventually persuaded him. I really do think you're the right director for this project. And I think my instincts were right. Ruan McGann was. He understood the complexity of it enough to be daunted by it, which was important. He took it on knowing that this was a big thing to try and wrap your arms around. But somehow together we did. And, it's 2.5 years by the time you get something like this over the line and off and launched. And now it's great because you see it out there being shown in Abu Dhabi, being shown in, I think, Uzbekistan this week or last week. So all over the world.
Yeah, and how amazing is that? Water is the universal language.
It's incredible. I'm telling you, when we went to Peru, they would say agua es vida, or whatever the Spanish for water is life is. Like everybody had the same idea. The Maori, the same idea. They believed the rivers were alive, and particularly the indigenous peoples all over the world. This was one of the epiphanies of the project, was without talking to one another, they all had the same fundamental idea and relationship with water. And I think that was a quite remarkable discovery on the whole project, was it is universal and it does connect us all.
What's some of the feedback that you've heard from viewers after producing two award-winning films?
Well, some of the nicest feedback in a way is from children. Actually, a school teacher called Mrs. Ray, and she's actually from Atlanta, Georgia. I'll send you the letters.
How about that?
It's for real. She contacted us and she said, my students have been watching your film in our STEM class, and she encouraged them to write letters to her. And actually, they said, Dear Mrs. Ray and Netflix, which is really cute. And you'd have a little boy called Josh, and he'd say, Dear Mrs. Ray and Netflix, I never knew that kids didn't all have access to water, and I never knew that you could make water from air. And they do little photographs and pictures. So that to me is success, because there's a child there somewhere now that is thinking something different. Their eyes are opened up. And it was just so personal and so captivating, I think. And I found this was happening in a grassroots way. Teachers were showing the film. I visited my cousins in Nashville, Tennessee, and over breakfast, they're asking me what I was up to, and I told them, and they said, I think we've seen your documentary. I think my teacher showed this to us in class. And Michael Flynn, one of our NASA scientists, he said he was walking down his neighborhood in California, and some girl stopped him and said, You're the guy from the film.
Yes, that's where I'm known from.
Right? Forget the NASA science stuff. And I thought, okay, he says to me, he said, Paul, that's success. He said, you're getting some, you're reaching people if you're getting that happening. And I thought, that's good to see. But, people told me they cried. I had a few people with the second film have told me they've been moved to tears. More than, I'm at least a half a dozen, I think now. And it's not that we want people to cry or be sad, but we do think that being moved emotionally is good. As much as we like to think we're rational beings, we're emotional creatures. And that's some of the feedback I've had. And that's been from screenings in Malaysia to the Netherlands to the US. For the first film, we had a video game developer from Uruguay contacted us and said, I love the film. Can I make a video game that gamifies this and kids can try and solve the world's water crisis?
Wow. Did they do it?
Yeah, it's called Water 2050. And the idea was you're in 2050 and it's kind of this dystopian world, but you get to travel back in time and you get to try and change things in 2020 that could make the world better, the world you live in. And then you got to go back to 2050 and find out, did it make a difference or did it not make a difference?
Paul, that's amazing. You had an idea, you put it out on a platform like Netflix, and now it's sparked all of this thought around that one idea. How does that make you feel?
Well, I think it's the empowering thing for everybody. It's that you just never know the effect. We're familiar with the butterfly effect. Every single human being is a part of the butterfly effect. Like the very fact that you're here, something's changing as a result of that. And you just don't know. You don't know that conversation you have in a taxi, that one thing. And I think that's the empowering thing about it. People often say, what can we do? Well, you're already doing something by being here. And what you believe in and what you care about has a wider effect. So I think it's nice to feel a part of that. And I do feel honored and privileged. And it's been fun as well, I'll have to say.
Other than the video game, have you heard of other innovations that have been a result of your films?
Yeah, I mean, I think water.org for sure had a lot of inbound inquiries, I think, from people who were moved by the vision that Matt Damon described of how we could solve water in our lifetime. Um, Beth Koigi with the Magic Water Box and atmospheric water capture. Beth's been able to advance what she's been doing to provide access for water for people in Kenya, Tanzania, and beyond. And it helped with that. And I think it probably helped other people in the general area providing access as well. Grey water reuse systems. We featured something on grey water reuse at the household. That's helped to open up people's mind that it's possible. I know Hydroloop and others benefited from that. It's hard to track everything, but I know we've got a few kind of indicators like that I can point to that tell us those at the very least. And you don't change everything with the film, to be honest. But what you can do is it's like throwing a pebble into a lake. You do create a few ripples. And we did work on Halo content around educational curriculum. And now we're working on a photography competition so that people out there, they don't have to be a filmmaker with a budget to tell a water story. Let's just take a photograph. And that photograph is photography competitions now out there, and we'll bring the winning photographs forward with us when we tour around the world. So you try and create a halo of activity around it, including Leanne Poe, one of our characters, her water walks as well. And look, our partners as well. I'd be remiss not to give a shout out to the Water Environment Federation, to Xylem, to DuPont Water Technologies, Grundfos, Suez, L'Oreal. Like every one of those groups got behind something that was risky, unknown, and untested at the time with the first project, but believed in the need for it. And they also got behind supporting the education, the outreach, the promotion, the festivals as well.
Where do you see innovation in water going in the future?
I'm seeing it becoming much more systems level change, and that's a word that's used very often. Maybe it's overused, but give you a specific example. You remember the Olympics last year in Paris, and how the mayor wanted to swim in the River Seine, and all the athletes were trying to figure out, could you swim in the River Seine? And suddenly the eyes of the world were hyper focused. Were they talking about CSO spill events? Not directly, but indirectly they were, because that was what was preventing the athletes from swimming in the river. Now, same city, when the Cathedral of Notre Dame burnt down tragically, it was rebuilt in a remarkably short period of time because people wanted it to happen. When people want something to happen, it can happen. People wanted people to swim in the River Seine. And I think where I'm seeing innovation going is you got to make it desirable. You got to show people something that's better for them. And that's where that power of storytelling comes in. In New York, one example is there's an artist called Mary Miss was working with the New York DEP to show people in Tibet's estuary what their roofs would look like if they were green roofs. And she wove a tapestry, and that was on public display, and the citizens could come in and kind of see, oh, wow, that would be awesome if we all had those green roofs. And I think, no, underneath that's the innovation, right? Yeah? You got your automation, your sensors, your control devices, your automated valves, your purification systems, everything. But those things are really only enabling something. The something so far has been clean water in my tap that doesn't make me sick, water that doesn't pollute my river and kill it. Now I think those technologies are flipping. There's a book called, I think it's Fahrenheit by Ray Bradbury, science fiction book, Fahrenheit 2, I can never remember the exact numbers, is it 211 or
Is it 211, I
211, I
think?
think, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So in Fahrenheit 211, the fire brigade didn't put out fires. The fire brigade went and burned books. So you get this curious inversion. I think the water sector that we work in, we've been water takers. Like we take water. But to be honest, where I'm seeing this going with innovations, we leave water. That's a much, much more positive goal. If you fix those leaks in those pipes, 30%, that's more water in the Colorado River that might eventually get to the Gulf of Mexico. And if you remove those endocrine disrupting compounds, the river becomes drinkable. If you close the loop on industry and data centers to rainwater capture, grey water reuse, you're leaving more water. So I think there's an inversion here occurring from harm limitation, where the technology and the innovation are tools in a toolkit that are allowing something slightly different to take place at a different systems level. That's what I'm seeing.
Paul, if there's someone listening today and they just have an idea, but it's that idea that could change something critically, they don't know what to do with it, what advice do you have for them?
Talk to people and get advice, because people are incredibly generous with their advice. That's what I have found. I've been amazed. Oftentimes in business, it can come across as very commercial, profit driven. I've seen an incredible amount of altruistic behavior. No reason for self interest. People have been very generous with their time and their advice to me. So I think anyone out there that has an idea, know that if you share that idea with others in this sector, more often than not, they will go out of their way to help you. And that's what I found incredibly useful. Know that it's your ikigai. Learned this word. Have you heard that word before?
I don't think I'm familiar with that word.
Yeah, I wasn't until about 2 years ago, and I've seen it popping up here and there now. So ikigai is a Japanese word, and it might translate as your reason to get out of bed in the morning. Why do you do what you do? You do it to earn a living, but it also connects you with people in your community and elsewhere, and it gives you a sense of purpose. And they found that people in these blue zones that live to be, to 100 and do so healthily, many of them have this sense of purpose. And I think water and working in the water sector has a little bit of this quality about it, because yes, you create some value for society, for yourself. So think of it now, and think long term. If you're a person out there that has this idea, if you only want to do it in a year or two, you probably aren't going to make that much of a difference. If you think about it in 5 years or 10 years, then I do think you've got a real chance of making a difference.
So, Paul, to go deeper on that person, because I know there's at least one out there that has that idea, any more advice for them?
I think approach it with a sense of curiosity, that you may be surprised by the value that your idea or your solution will create, and don't think that you know that already or yet, because oftentimes there's a bit of discovery in that. That's part of the fun of it, or that's part of the process. I remember when I was working with that company, Ostara Nutrient Recovery Technologies, we had an ability to create crystallized fertilizer pellets. It's called Crystal Green. So I was cold calling wastewater treatment plant operators, Hampton Road Sanitation District, York, Pennsylvania, Clean Water Services in Oregon. And you can just imagine now me with this accent phoning up an operator in Hampton Road Sanitation District and say, do you have a biological phosphorus removal systems? Yes, we do. Oh, and you got anaerobic digesters as well? Said, yes, we do. And I said, yeah, do you ever find the phosphorus precipitates? Because that's where you get the ability to do the phosphorus recovery. I said, oh boy, yeah, we sure do. I mean, man, we had to drain down the digester a month or two ago. We had to go with chisels and sledgehammers and knock all that stuff off. And then we had to cut out the pipes and replace the pipes. And what we discovered through that process was that really the problem we were solving immediately for those two plants, and there are full scale reactors there now, was the headache for the operator of having to drain down a digester and get in there into a confined space with a confined space entry permit with sledgehammers and chisel away precipitate. So everything we thought we knew about struvite, magnesium, ammonium phosphate, slow release fertilizer, great story, we can share the value, we'll do a joint revenue sharing with you. Yeah, that's nice, but right immediately today, and this is the innovation today thing, try and find a problem that someone has today, ideally. Trying to solve a problem that somebody might have tomorrow is a little bit of a risky venture, but be open to the fact that you may not know yet where exactly your greatest value contribution is. But by talking to people like those operators, that's what we discovered, and I'll never forget it.
Paul, if you could only get one point across today, what do you want that point to be?
It's a journey, and enjoy it.
Well, we're going to be sure to put your contact information on our show notes page. I have no doubt that there are people with ideas that probably need your help. So we're going to make that very easy for them to find you. But I do have some lightning round questions for you if we can shift gears to that.
Sure thing.
All right, so these are questions that I ask of all my guests. And question number one is if you could go back in time and talk to your former self on your very first day as a water scientist, what advice would you give yourself?
Trust your gut. I've learned, I guess, over time, maybe now, and things that I saw that I thought were maybe a little bit esoteric at the time, like blue-green infrastructure, nature-based solutions. When I started out as a young water engineer, those were looked at as kind of not mainstream. And I wasn't an engineer, I was a scientist. And I think trust your gut is one thing I've learned over time, I guess, that I would say to myself. But then again, your gut gets better over time as you get more experience, and your gut instinct's based on experience. So it's not as simple as that. But no, believe in yourself, maybe would be the way I would put it.
What are the last few books that you've read?
Well, I've just finished one called Fluke, which is really interesting. It's about random chance events, probabilities, like does everything happen for a reason or does it not happen for a reason? Is it completely random? And this is really informing our work at BlueTech as well on risk and probability and concepts like complexity versus something that's complicated. A Swiss watch is complicated. There's a lot of little things going on inside there, like a Rolex, but it's not that complex. Like, you know exactly what it's going to do. The weather system is complex. The political system is complex. And I think we live in a world where, with certain technologies, they're complicated, but they oftentimes sit in a world that's very complex. So, Fluke has been really interesting, I thought. I'd recommend that to everyone. It's on our BlueTech internal book club at the moment. And one that I'm right in the middle of right now, it's about rivers, river power. And river power is really good. It's all about how the whole history of human civilization can be traced through our interaction with rivers from deltas and floodplains. And the high priests of Egypt had these Nilometers and they could predict famine and stuff like this based on the height of water. And it's fascinating.
When they make a movie about Dr. Paul O'Callaghan, who do you want playing you in a movie?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, if it was a guy, I'd go for Timothy Chalamet, okay? Because I love Bob Dylan and he just did a brilliant job of Bob Dylan, so why not? And then, but I love Scarlett Johansson's voice. So if they wanted to flip it a little bit and invert the story, I'd probably go for Scarlett Johansson.
All right, I love that answer. Last question. You now have the power to talk to anybody throughout history. Who would it be with and why?
I'd have a little whisper in the ear of Donald J. Trump. And I'd say water is critical. We take it for granted and it's critical to so much. And I look at all the industry repatriation going on right now and shifts with data centers and pharmachem and electronics. And I think the role of water in there would be very critical to the long-term success of those industries and the people that work and thrive in those industries as well.
So you'd want to know what he's going to do about it.
I mean, I thought I had this pitch idea like make America's water great again. Like that's the type of thing, isn't it? That should appeal.
That should be a hat.
Like make America's water great again, right? The Great Lakes, the Mississippi, the Colorado. Like these are powerful, defining things. And I think there's a pride that goes with that. And wouldn't there be if you could make them better, and the Hudson and everything else. So like I can't see how that is not a bipartisan issue, right? That's like surely that's not going to divide people.
Well, Paul, I want to say you have done so much to try to bring knowledge to everybody around not only the importance of water, but how it connects us, all the things that we're able to do, including live on this planet because of water. And I not only want to thank you for that, but I want to thank you for being a great guest on the Scaling Up H2O podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And thanks to all of your team. They've been wonderful to work with.
Well, Paul, once again, thank you for coming on the Scaling Up H2O podcast. I've known Paul for a couple of years. He was introduced by a mutual friend. He was actually a member of the Rising Tide Mastermind for a while. And Paul is just amazing at all the things that he does and all the people that he connects. And how cool is it that now we have a member of the Scaling Up Nation that's a movie star? By the way, if you have not seen the shows that we mentioned today, we're going to make sure that the dynamics of water innovation and also Our Blue World are on, or at least the notes are there on our show notes page. You have to have a Netflix subscription to get those, but we'll try to make sure that all of those notes are there so you can very easily watch those. Trust me, you'll be glad that you did. And how cool is it that now you get to see people that Paul was talking about in this very podcast? And who knows, maybe we'll get Matt Damon on the podcast. I know water is one of the projects he wants to make sure that he is giving back to while he's on this planet. So maybe Paul will introduce us to him and we can introduce him to you, this Scaling Up Nation. Nation, I hope that through the interview, through talking with Paul, through the introduction, that you're thinking about, how do I continuously challenge myself? How do I learn the next new thing? So many people will come up to me in conferences and say that they just started a college course or they just started some sort of certificate program. The internet makes things so easy to do now because you can go on LinkedIn and get a certificate in a particular item, or are there so many other communities out there where you don't have to enroll in a college? You can just enroll in a topic you want to learn more about, take a course, and now, hey, you got a certificate to say that you've accomplished that. That might be the start on how you learn what the new next thing is. But it's my hope that you are now thinking, if you weren't already, how do I continuously push myself to get better? How do I learn what the next new thing is? And maybe I'll find something that I love because I'm doing that. Nation, I sure love bringing this podcast to you every week. And as always, we're going to have a brand new episode for you next Friday. Until then, take care, folks. Accelerate your success. Why go it alone when you can get further faster and have more fun doing it? The Rising Tide Mastermind offers a dynamic environment where you can grow professionally and personally while enjoying the journey. To find out more about the Rising Tide Mastermind, go to scalinguph2o.com/mastermind. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/mastermind. Find out if the Rising Tide Mastermind is right for you.